Now for another perspective on VR. Joel Green from Horseheads, New York.
That's not
Plural Horseheads.
That's not a real place.
What's your favorite game store there?
This is a message from Don Corleone.
Joel says, I have a huge concern about VR and me. I want to make video games for my career. I'm a senior in high school. I make games whenever I can. I'm also planning on going to college for games.
Awesome.
My concern is that by the time I'm old enough to enter the games industry, VR will have taken over, and that will be the new standard for gaming. And because it's so new now, I probably won't be educated in VR development by the end of college. Whenever I hear about VR, I get concerned for myself, but I'm excited for the industry. What do you think about this scenario, as I can't get it off my mind? I know VR probably won't take off super fast, but it will always be a concern in the back of my head. How fast will VR catch on is what he's wondering.
Great question.
He doesn't need to be concerned. I mean, he's...
Like you were saying last week, traditional game development is not going to cease.
No. There's 2 points. First of all, if whatever kind of game you want to make, you can make that kind of game now. Small indie tower defense game, huge AAA VR game, like that you can run the gamut. But the point I was really going to make is that he's one of the youngs. I'm one of the olds. I'm the one that has a hard time keeping up. Like, what 18-year-old is worried about things
If you're an
moving
olds, I'm an olders.
I mean, we're all the olds, like, sort of, the more time that passes. But I mean, I say that half jokingly, but it's super true. Like, the younger you are, you're up on the apps and the social medias and the games and all the new technologies.
Big pants, pagers.
Snapchat,
Yeah.
Minecraft.
Are the kids wearing big pants or small pants now? I don't know. I can't keep up what pants kids are wearing. And that's kind of how I feel about VR. Like, if you truly want to go to school for game design or computer science or, whatever you want to get your degree in, like, you're going to be educated on what you need to be educated on.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be able to move fast and keep up to a degree that the people that need to be worried are the people that have been making games a certain way for 20 years. If the market truly does move to VR rapidly, those are the people that are going to be in trouble because they're going to have a set of skills that are either going to be impossible or challenging to sort of transition to this new reality. You don't have like an incorrect set of skills yet.
Yeah, a lot of software engineers through their careers find ways to continue to innovate. It is hard to find time. When you're in a crunch and you're just trying to do one thing, it is hard to study something else. I definitely understand the legitimacy of that concern. And I do think that you're just going to have to keep proactively studying. Some of the best engineers I know keep learning new languages so they can stay relevant. Now we're talking about new platforms. When gaming went from 2D to 3D, a lot of developers, particularly in Japan, but also here in the US, were shaken out. Frankly, a lot of them folded because their engineers couldn't make the transition fast enough. So there is some legitimacy to that concern, but the fact that you're already thinking that way, I think puts you ahead of the curve. And also, as Justin pointed out, these games tend to come back. Yes, VR is going to be a huge thing, but it's not going to wipe out types of gaming. There was a period of time for a while where you could barely find a 2D platformer, and then everybody's like, oh yeah, those are still fun. Right now, it's hard to find a flight combat space sim, but Star Citizen is coming. And we're like, oh yeah, those are fun. And that's going to happen again too. But yeah, just stay up on it. That's going to be, the burden's going to be on you for that. It's hard, I realize, but keep doing it. Don't fall behind. Don't let yourself become irrelevant. If you walk into it with that attitude, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, so we can play your games.
You haven't learned anything yet that needs to be tossed out. Like someone in the 90s that spent a decade learning how to animate 2D sprites either had to learn to animate 3D models or, was probably out of a job. Like, because 2D games are big, but they aren't everything like they used to be, So I think you'll be fine.
I want to talk about this for a long time because we talked about it before in GameScoop, but this is part of a larger problem in gaming where it's really hard to make a video game. And it's too hard to make a video game, and it still is. And I can make a record, and I can write a book, and I can make a movie very easily by myself or with a small group of people.
Sure.
And the small group of people thing is becoming more possible with games, but generally, the scale of games is so hard to attain by yourself right now. If you're an amateur, and I'm not saying like you can go to school or be a great coder and not make you can make a game that way. But if you just want to one day do those other things I mentioned, you absolutely can do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I think we're seeing tools like Unity. It was several years ago. I don't know if it still is, but it was free. Like you can just download Unity, which is the game platform that huge AAA games are made on in many cases, and you could download it and tinker around with it, and there's tutorials and stuff, but it's hugely complex and complicated. Like anyone can make a shitty album. Like you don't need any skill or talent at all. But not anyone can even make the skill. The tools are still too dense and complicated to even make.
Not anyone, to even make a crappy video game.
Yeah, you've got Unity. Well, you do have things. You have GameMaker. You have Inform. You have Twine. You've got systems like that
Yeah,
to
but
create
that's
certain
pretty
kinds of games.
yeah.
Game Maker's the only one that I've seen used. Like the Undertale was making Game Maker.
Yeah,
for
but
example, and that's cool,
even
you
Game
know.
Maker is still, like, I've tinkered around in that a little bit too. Some of that is, unfortunately, I don't want to be too much of a pessimist, but it's an unsolvable problem because games are a multidisciplinary media.
I think
in
what
the
will
way
solve
that
it will
other
be
things
AI. And if I can if I can explain to a computer what
Just
I
make
want to
level
get,
2 better.
well, if I can
Got it.
explain the activities of AI will solve this problem.
I agree. That's absolutely the answer.
Yeah.
Speaking of VR development, last week I hosted a few VR developers here in the studio for a little roundtable about VR gaming and where it's going. And one of the questions I asked them is how they had to approach developing a VR game differently than a traditional game. And I thought one thing Ted Price from Insomniac had to say that they learned developing a first-person VR game is that they have to be mindful that the player, since you can look around in 360 degrees, if you allow the player to sort of actually spin around, they're just going to get like caught up. First of all, if you're sitting in a chair, it's hard to like turn around and look behind you. So they try to like funnel the player in one direction with like a wide berth, but sort of prevent them from actually spinning around because it's just too difficult to actually spin around in your chair. You're getting like twisted up in wires and stuff. And that's why I think it's so interesting. One of the Oculus Rift launch games, Eve Valkyrie, solves it for this because they just put you in a chair. And you can't spin around, right? You're just seated in the chair the whole time.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
I think that's interesting too. Also, what solves that is in the Vive Portal demo and the Vive budget cuts, you have that thing that you basically zap around using portals, and so you're always resetting your need to spin around.
Yeah, did we talk about how clever Budget Cuts
so
is
good.
on Scoop?
Not yet.
Because I don't think that game's getting enough credit for it. If you haven't watched the demo, IGN has a really good demo of it up, or you can watch the other outlets have done it as well. That game has sort of a Portal-esque system for movement where you sort of shoot a portal on a wall or floor, and then your character moves there. They zap there. You can zap yourself around. And I thought it was like me. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. But I didn't even realize until I thought about it more deeply that that's solving the big problem of VR, which is how do you stop from people running into walls and because you can't just let people move around. You have to solve the movement problem.
Yeah.
And that solves the movement problem in such a clever way.
That's
like
great.
You can move around a whole office while sitting in a chair, and still, but it doesn't break the immersion of the VR experience.
It's really natural. The flow is great.
Right. So that's I don't know if that'll become the standard in a way that like a left analog stick has
It's
been
funny
standard,
how it was
but-
in the Portal game. Like I didn't notice it until I'd played Budget Cuts that it was in other games. And there's so many experiments right now with mobility in those worlds. But like maybe this will be a standard and maybe it'll be improved upon. It's really funny to think of we're seeing standards being made right now for early VR.
It's a very super cool, clever game on its own. But that particular problem that it solves is pretty genius.